Having the choir back together is the best part of Christmas and Easter, I think. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Peter. So every year, I struggle with writing an Easter sermon. Every year I wonder what I can possibly add to a conversation about resurrection. And I know why I struggle. It's because I don't have a good explanation for myself about what happened on Easter morning. I think it's pretty easy to preach or teach if you either have a solid grasp of your subject, or in the case of preaching, if it's one of those rock solid, this is what I believe in my gut intuitively, and I can't prove it and I don't worry about proving it, it's true for me. So for me, unfortunately, resurrection isn't in either of those categories. I can't explain it rationally, but it also, it's not quite in the gut level. I'm just willing to accept it because I don't understand it. The list of things that are for me, and this is just me, everybody figures this out for themselves. The list of things that for me are intuitive and solid, there are only two, right? God exists and death is not the end. That's how I started seminary. That's how I came out of seminary. That's just for me, and it doesn't bother me that I can't prove them. I'm perfectly willing to live my life as if they are true. As ifism, yeah, we're big on that. Because I like the frame of mind it creates for me when I hold those. But really, there are only two things on that list, and resurrection isn't there. I'm sorry, it just isn't. So I'm sort of stuck. I am, Easter morning's a little bit of a struggle for me. So what I've discovered, and we found this, the group of us that watched the John Dominic Crossan videos, I got a clue about why I struggle with it. Crossan has amassed an enormous inventory of photographs of Christian religious art taken in churches and museums all over Europe and the Middle East, and things that he's gleaned off the internet that he doesn't have direct access to, like stuff that's in the Vatican archives and things like that. And he commented in one of these videos that nowhere in all of that inventory has he found a depiction in a painting, a fresco, a statue, a whatever, of the exact moment of resurrection. See, artists tend to draw the stories of their time and the culture around them. And his thought, he just kind of threw it out there, and I went, oh yeah. Maybe the reason there are no pictures of the moment of resurrection is that there actually is not a tradition. There's no story around what happened. There's only the evidence that something happened, right? We got the evidence. The stone is rolled away, the tomb is empty, the angels are here to say, don't be afraid. We got lots of evidence that something happened, but the exact moment, no pictures. So maybe I'm in really good company, not knowing exactly what happened on Easter morning. This year, I decided to take a different approach to my Easter sermon. Also from a clue from Crossan and his friend Marcus Borg. What if, just for today, we set aside worrying about the historical veracity of the resurrection? See, the last 5 years of Easter sermons that I've preached from up here have all been attempts to make sense of it rationally. Just put that over here. I'm not rendering an opinion about what I think happened. I'm just not going to worry about it this morning. What if instead we approached Easter morning as a parable? In a parable, we look for the meaning, for the truth of the story, not whether it historically actually happened. So, for example, we read the parable of the Good Samaritan. We tell our children, we use it as a model for living, but as far as I know, nobody has ever embarked on a research project to figure out if there was literally a man from Samaria who once, 2,000 years ago, stopped to help a Jew. I mean, what would be the point? Even if you knew it actually historically had happened, would it change the meaning of that parable for you? I don't think so. So nobody bothers to worry about it. What if we approached Easter looking for the meaning of it and not for the history? So let's begin this quest by looking at the only source we have for information about that morning, which is the four Gospels. Each of them has a version of Easter morning, and just like we found with the Christmas stories, the versions are a little bit different. They were each originally written for a particular community that was following Jesus. And as stories will, when you repeat them, they morph a little bit. It was decades after Jesus died that they finally got written down. And in those decades, they all had, they're all a little bit different. Who was there? How many angels? What did the angels say? Who did they say it to? Where did Jesus appear in the weeks after the resurrection? There are, the details are a little bit different. But there are a few things that all four of the Gospels agree on. The stone was rolled away. The tomb was empty. Mary Magdalene was there, and there were angels. Some kind of vision, some kind of spirit energy showed up to communicate. Now, David read for you the end of Mark, which is the earliest of the four Gospels. And that last line, so they, meaning the women, went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Well, obviously they said something to somebody, or we wouldn't know what the story was, right? But there are no appearances of Jesus in original Mark. That's just where it stops, these women being freaked out. Later on, 2nd century at the earliest, people added another 10 verses to Mark to bring it in line with Matthew and Luke. But the writing style is different. You can tell it's an appendix. So what Mark wrote stops right where David did. So this core of things that the Gospels agree on, what does it mean? What truth is it trying to convey to us? The empty tomb, the angels, the spirit visions are meant to tell us that Jesus lives. Not, this is my opinion, you feel free to come to a different conclusion, but in my opinion, not as an atoms and molecules body, as Alan Lightman would say. Not the physical body that he let go of when he died on the cross. Jesus lives as spirit. That's the spirit that we call Christ. His energy, his channeling of love was so powerful that he could reappear in that form. And it's not a completely unique appearance, as we've talked before about, what the yogis can do with that kind of energy. But the power of love, which is how we experience God, is alive. It triumphs over death. That's what we mean by that statement. There's a quote on the back of your bulletin that totally says it. Easter morning says, you can put truth in a grave, but it won't stay there. See, the whole passion story of Jesus is like the archetype of what happens when truth meets power. Power almost always doesn't like being confronted by truth. And power thinks it can win by exerting force, by killing. Power thinks that without a flesh and blood body, truth cannot speak. But death is like a minor detour. Truth marches on. Truth will always reappear. It is in the nature of the universe. Remember how we talked at Advent about the difference between peace through victory and peace through justice? The difference between the kingdom of Caesar and the kingdom of God? The difference between being ruled by power and fear and being ruled by love? Easter says, one more time, love is stronger. Love endures. Love outlasts power and fear. Love outlasts death. These two kingdoms, the kingdom of Caesar and the kingdom of God, coexist in the here and now on earth, and we each have a choice about which one of them we want to follow, which one we want to live in. It reminds me of that Native American parable that I'm sure you have heard before, but I'll repeat it just in case. It goes like this. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he says to the boy. It's a terrible fight, and it's between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. He continued, the other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which wolf will win? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. The challenge is that the kingdom of Caesar, which is the world as we know it, it's the story of civilization, is so overwhelmingly present that we struggle to catch a glimpse of the kingdom of love. Its rules are so different that we can hardly believe they will work. Okay, so I thought of a demonstration to show you what I mean, and this is either going to be really memorable or a total disaster. So, or both. Okay, all right. So here, I'm trying to illustrate what I mean by the rules that operate in these two kingdoms are so different that we can hardly believe that following the kingdom of love actually will work. Okay, so I got 2 candles, right? Ordinary candles. In our ordinary world, in the kingdom of Caesar, when I give away a candle, my right hand is empty. When I give it here, it represents a loss here. It's ordinary arithmetic. 1 minus 1 is 0. Fear of that loss causes people to clutch, to refuse to share, to hold on to it. It produces a sense of scarcity. Okay, hang on just a minute. This time, watch the flame. When I give the flame away, it makes more. I haven't lost a thing. In fact, the flame has multiplied. 1 minus 1 is 2. That's the way arithmetic works in the kingdom of God. It's fundamentally different. Love given away makes more love. It produces a sense of abundance. When you change the fundamental arithmetic, you change everything that's built on top of it. Jesus taught that we could experience the kingdom of God just by living according to its rules, just by feeding the good wolf. Love, service, honesty, humility, forgiveness, nonviolence. When the pre-Easter Jesus the man reappears as post-Easter Christ the Spirit, it was to demonstrate for us the ongoing power of love and all that he taught. Love endures. Love overcomes even death. It is truly the most powerful force in the universe. What actually happened at the moment of resurrection? Does it really matter whether we know or not? If you knew, would the meaning of Easter change for you? Maybe not. Maybe it's not necessary to know. Maybe it's only necessary to keep your eye on the flame. Oh, do I have a volunteer to blow out my candles? Thank you.
I want to blow one.
No, not yet.